This is Keeper of the Lost Cities, Chapter 6. That night, Sophie dreamed that Kepler elves were holding her hostage until she perfected all their cookie recipes. Then she told them she liked Oreos better, and they tried to drown her with a giant vat of fudge. She woke up in a cold sweat and decided sleep was overrated. When morning came, she took a quick shower and threw on her best jeans and t-shirt. She never worn buttery yellow with brown stripes. It was the only item in her closet that wasn't gray, and she'd always been too self-conscious to wear it. But the color brought out the gold flecks in her eyes, and today she would see fits again. As much as she hated to admit it, she wanted to look good. She even clipped part of her hair back and toyed with the idea of lip gloss. But that was too far. Then she snuck downstairs to check it outside for him. She crept into the front yard, blinking and keeping the falling ash out of her eyes. The smoke was so thick, it stuck to her skin. Seriously, when were they going to get those fires contained? Looking for someone? Her next door neighbor asked from her perch in the middle of her lawn. From his perch in the middle of the lawn. Mr. Forkley could always be found there, rearranging hundreds of garden gnomes into an elaborate talabue. No, she said, hating how noisy he was. I was checking to see if the smoke was any better. I guess not, she coughed, for added effect. His beady blue eyes bored into her, and she could tell from his thoughts that he didn't believe her. You kids, he grumbled, always up to something. Mr. Forkley loved to start sentences with you kids. Start sentences with the words you kids. He was old and smelled like feet and was always complaining about something. But he was the only one who called 911 when she fell and hit her head, so she was obligated to be nice. He moved a gnome a fraction of an inch to the left. You should get back inside before the smoke gives you another headache. You're always... Loud yapping interrupted him as a ball of fur with legs streaked up the sidewalk, sparking its tiny head off. A blond guy in spandex jogging shorts chased after it. Would you mind grabbing her? He called to Sophie as the dog ran across her lawn. I'll try. The dog was quick, but Sophie managed to step on the leash with a clumsy lunge. She kneeled, stroking the wild-eyed, panting creature to calm her down. Thank you so much, the guy said as he ran up the path. As soon as he drew closer, the dog growled and strained against the leash, barking like mad. She's my sister's dog, he shouted over the noise. She hates me, not my sister, the dog, he added. He held out his hand, displaying several half-moon bite wounds, fresh and still bleeding. One was so deep it definitely would leave a scar. Sophie picked up the trembling dog and hugged her. Why was the dog so afraid? I don't suppose you'd be willing to carry her back to my sister's house? It's just a few blocks away, and she seems to like you a little better than me. He winked at one of his piercing blue eyes. She most certainly will not, Mr. Forkley yelled before she could open her mouth to answer. Sophie, go inside. And you, he pointed to the jogger, get out of here right now, or I'm calling the police. The guy's eyes narrowed. I wasn't asking you. I don't care, Mr. Forkley interrupted. Get away. Get away from her now. The barking grew louder as the guy moved towards Sophie. She could barely think through the chaos, but there was something in his expression that made her wonder if he was planning to grab her and drag her away. And that's when it hit her. She couldn't hear his thoughts. Even with the barking, she should have heard something. Would Fitz have sent someone else to his play in his place? But if he had, why wouldn't the jogger say that? Why try to trick her? Before she could react, Mr. Forkley stepped between them, stopping the jogger in his tracks. Mr. Forkley might have been on the old side, but he was a large man, and when he straightened up to his full height, he made quite an intimidating figure. They stared at each other down for a few seconds, then the jogger shook his head and backed off. Sophie, let the dog go, Mr. Forkley ordered. She did as he said, and the dog raced away. The jogger growled. The jogger glowered. I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be glared. The jogger glared at them both, before he took off after it. Sophie released the breath she had been holding. You're okay, Mr. Forkley promised. If I see him again, I'll call the police. She nodded, trying to find her voice. Thanks. Mr. Forkley snorted, shaking his head and grumbling something that started with, you kids. As he returned to his lawn gnomes, better get inside. Right, she agreed, moving up the path on shaky legs. As soon as the front door closed, she leaned against it, trying to make sense of the scattered questions racing through her brain. Why would that guy try to grab her? Could he be another elf? Fitz had some serious explaining to do whenever he decided to make his next appearance. There was still no sign of Fitz when she got to school, and now she wasn't sure what to do. He might be waiting for her to be alone before he appeared, but the dog insisted she wanted a few eyewitnesses around. Unless Fitz had sent the jogger to get her. It was also frustrating and confusing. She headed for class when the bell rang. Lurking a few steps behind the other students, a hand grabbed her arm and pulled her into the shadows between buildings. Sophie stopped her screaming just in time to recognize Fitz. Where have you been? She demanded a little too loudly. Several heads turned their way. Do you have any idea what I've been coming through? Miss me bad, huh? He whispered, flashing a cocky smile. She felt the blood rush to her face and looked away to hide her blush. More like you left me alone with a ton of unanswered questions and no way to find you, and then this guy showed up and tries to grab me, and... Whoa, wait, what guy? I don't know, she said. Some creepy blonde dude tried to trick me into wandering off with him. And when I wouldn't, it looked like he was going to snatch me, but I wasn't sure because I couldn't hear his thoughts, and I thinking he might be another elf. Okay, slow down, Fitz swept his hair back. No one else knows you're here, only my dad, and he sent me to get you. Then why couldn't I hear his thoughts? I don't know, he admitted. Are you sure you couldn't? She replayed the scene, trying to remember. There had been a lot of barking and growling, her heart pounding in her ears. She couldn't remember hearing Mr. Forkley's thoughts now that she thought about it, and she could always hear his. Maybe not, she said quietly. My guess is he was human, and maybe his mind is just quieter than others. But we'll check with my dad. We'd better move through, he pointed to a teacher who was eyeing them like She suspected impending mischief. We can't leave with people around. Leap, she squeaked as he pulled her from her behind the English building. I can't ditch ClassFits. They'll call my parents. And after yesterday, I think my mom might strangle me. This is important, Sophie. You have to come with me. Why? Just trust me. She locked her knees so he couldn't pull her any further. She couldn't keep disappearing all the time, elf or not. She had a life here with classes she could fail and her parents who could ground her. How am I supposed to trust you when you won't even tell me anything? You can trust me because I'm here to help you. That wasn't good enough. If he wouldn't tell her what was going on, she knew how to find out. If it was strange to willingly use her telepathy after so many years at trying to block it, but it was the only way to find out what he was hiding. So she closed her eyes and reached for his thoughts, the way she had the day before. The breeze brushed through her mind, whispering scattered pieces of information. Nothing she needed, though. But when she pushed a little further, she found what he was hiding. A test. She shrieked. What am I being tested for?
Hey, how's it going?
Good, you?
Good. I got it.
You read my mind.
Stop by
She
when you
dragged
get
her
ready.
deeper into the shadows.
Well, what's up?
Reading for a class?
Well, good luck.
Yeah.
Why are you filming yourself?
Because it's for, we have to either film or take video. Film or take photos. And this is easier than taking photos and then typing up what I did. So.
Like an online class, is that what you're doing?
No, it's for wall quests.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
Alright, well, enjoy.
Yeah. You read my mind. She dragged her deeper into the shadow, shaking his head.
If you're signing up for the ACT in April, today's the last day to do it without paying the fee.
Okay. Shaking his head harder. Hard. You can't do that, Sophie. You can't listen to someone's thoughts anytime you want to know something. There are rules. You've tried to read my mind without my permission. That's different. I'm on an assignment. What's that supposed to mean? Fitz ran his hand through his hair, which he seemed to do when he was frustrated. It doesn't matter what it means. What matters is you could get in big trouble for invading someone's mind like that. It's a serious offense. The way he said serious made everything inside her scrunch and twist together. Really? She asked quietly. Yeah, so don't do it again. She started to nod, but a small movement at a nearby oak caught her attention and she froze. Her heart hammering so hard it drowned out everything else. It was only for a second, but she could have sworn she saw the jogger's face. He's here, she whispered. The guy who tried to grab me. Where? Fitz scanned the campus. She gestured towards the tree, but there was no one around. No thoughts nearby either. Did she imagine it? Fitz pulled the silver pathfinder from his pocket and adjusted the crystal. I don't see anyone, but let's get out of here. We shouldn't keep everyone waiting anyway. Who is everyone? My parents and a committee of our counselors is a part of the test you heard me thinking about. When he broke into my head, he shot her a sidelong glance, and she felt her cheeks heat up. Sorry, she mumbled. She'd never thought of telepathy as breaking in before, but she could see his point. His thoughts hadn't automatically filled her mind the way they did with humans. She'd shoved her way in and took them. She'd been furious if someone did that to her. She wouldn't make that mistake again. It wasn't like she'd ever enjoyed being a telepath anyway. Reading minds always caused way more problems than it solved. Fitz took her hand and led her into the sunlight. Ready? He asked as he held up the Pathfinder. She nodded, hoping he could feel the way her arm was shaking. Can you tell me what the test determines? He grinned as his eyes locked with hers. Your future. And that is the end of chapter 6.